Welcome back to our video series on the Play framework using Scala. We continue working on our fourth version of the task list. This one uses React, and we have gotten to the point where a login, when successful, will swap over to a component that right now just says task list and doesn't have much inside of it. We really don't need this code that we had pulled from task 3 because all we're doing is calling this function, which was given to it by the parent component that says that we are now logged in. And so now I want to do some things with the task component. So right now it just says task list. I want to add a few things to this. One is that it should have, so after task list, maybe it would be good to have a break and then have an unordered list that has no properties but is going to have some children to it. For the children right now, I'm just going to put in a placeholder here for a single list item, no props, and we'll say a task. Okay, just something that can hold that place for us, because we will need to have an unordered list with all of the tasks that are read in, but I kind of just want to set this up with some basic task placeholders for that. So after the unordered list, let's make sure we get a nice break, and then I need the section that has the ability to add elements for us, and then we're going to need a log out. So the adding elements would be possibly its own div, no props, but it does have sub elements, one of which is going to be an input of type text. We can stop it there for now. And a second one that will be a button. Let's see, how about null and add task. And then I want another break and a log out that if we click on it will, I'm trying to decide, should we do this as a button? Sure. A button that says log out. So a button, we are going to add some props because it needs a click handler, and it will say log out on it. And so let's put in a click handler here. On click is going to get an event. And what do we want to do? Well, just like up here, we needed something passed in the props to do a login. I actually kind of need the same type of thing here. This dot props dot do log out. Now, of course, right now we don't have that, so when I try to call that as a function, I would get a nice little error. But when we set up the task list component, it is simple enough to give it a do log out that is a function. This dot set state of logged in is set to false. Okay, so I have a little bit more in here. It's worth running it just to make sure this displays properly and I haven't messed up the syntax too horribly. I did put a return statement, and then also to make sure that log out takes us back to the login page. So if we refresh here, we get back to our login page, a task, we have something to add, doesn't do anything yet, and logout takes us back to this page. Excellent. User, that's a failed. I want to make sure that when we log out, it doesn't have that message. Okay, so this appears to be doing just about everything that we want, at least that we have coded up. Now we need to figure out the elements of adding a task and getting this to display the proper tasks. So getting this to display the proper tasks is, this is an example that is commonly used in tutorials on React, is the task list. But it's a task list there that doesn't communicate with the server. It's just a website where people can add and remove the tasks without having a server backend on it. In our case, we have a server backend. We actually have a source that we want to get these things from. It should not always start off as empty. And so the items that are on that task list really need to be put in our state, because they are going to change, right? When we add stuff, it will get longer. When we delete stuff, it will get shorter. And to start it off, we're actually going to start off with no items, but then we have to talk to the server to get them. So this dot state, we'll call it tasks, and it will simply be an empty array to start off with. And so what I want to do here is, instead of just creating a list that has tasks on it, I want this to be tasks dot map, and we're going to give it a function that takes a single task and an index. We'll discuss why a bit later. And what I want it to produce for us is this, with the variable task there. Okay, so we want a list item that has the task for that string. I'm not currently using index. The reason for this is actually, if you go back and look at our code, the way we delete is by index. And there's one of the things about JavaScript's map function is it doesn't just, the function actually gets 3 arguments: the item, its index, and the full collection. Most of the time people just use the first one, but all 3 are passed through. Okay, now given that functionality, what should happen when we log in? Oh, tasks not defined. Oh, indeed, this needs to be this dot state dot tasks. Okay, let's try that again. Sure enough, and that's exactly what we wanted, right? There is an unordered list here that has no elements in it, and that is correct. So how are we going to get elements in it? Well, those elements need to come from the server, which means we need to load them in. And here again, we are going to make a fetch type call. We have a function from our previous version called load tasks. You know what? It might be nice to actually grab that function and paste it inside of our task list component, because this is where we are going to need to do that. So load tasks, this is no longer, so our unordered list, nope, not how we're doing things anymore, and we don't clear out its HTML. We do go to the tasks route, we parse it as JSON, and then these tasks, well, so this had a whole bunch of code that was going to do various things. Once we get these tasks though, all I want to do here is this dot set state of an object with tasks. That is in JavaScript a shorthand for, I'm actually going to cut all the rest of this for now. JavaScript allows you to use this shorthand. It creates an object with a property with that name that has the value of that variable in it. And so that should set this up. And the question is, when do we load tasks? And this is where the lifecycle methods come in. So if we go back and look at the React, we're on the state and lifecycle. There are a number of different methods that are activated at different points during the life cycle of a component. And in this case, the component did mount, just like their timer in their example, they use component did mount, and at that point they set an interval. We don't want an interval. We don't want this happening over and over again, but we could define a component did mount. So this is something that will happen as soon as the component gets mounted, and it happens in this case exactly once. So the mounting methods only happen the first time. They do not re-happen when state has changed, which in this case is good because we don't want it so that setting the state, after all, our load sets the state. We don't want that to set the state over and over again. So when we get our component in there, we'll then go ahead and load the tasks, and when the server responds, it will be present. Now, one of the nice things about this is our page like this will actually pop up with no tasks to start with. If the server takes a long time responding, they'll still see a page, the user will see something. We could put a placeholder in here if we wanted, some type of a task that says loading or whatnot, but they will see something on the page, and once we get our response, it should be filled in. Okay, so we have a fun little warning here. This is something we will have to deal with. It's another reason for having that index, but there's the tasks that we wanted. Okay, so we have fairly complete code. There's this interesting thing about having keys on our children, and we'll come back to that in the next video.